Don't touch the food? You're not family, my mom yelled at my fiancé during the $8,000 dinner I paid for. Then enjoy your retirement without my money, I snapped, while canceling the $38,000 cruise I gifted her and cutting them off forever. A few days later, she showed up screaming on my porch. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Sup Reddit. 8 months ago, I learned that blood doesn't make you family. What started as a retirement dinner turned into a full-blown disaster. They disrespected me and thought I'd still pay for everything. They were wrong. Here's what went down. I, 29 male, have been grinding since I was 16. Started working summers doing basic plumbing repairs for my neighbor, who owned a small contracting business. Spent 4 years learning everything: residential, commercial, emergency calls at 3 a.m. when someone's basement was flooding. Saved every dollar I could while living in a studio apartment that barely fit my bed and a mini fridge. Those early years taught me the value of every dollar. While my high school friends were blowing money on concerts and parties, I was learning pipe fitting and drain cleaning. Spent weekends at supply houses memorizing part numbers and building relationships with wholesalers. 5 years ago, I took out a $45,000 business loan and started my plumbing company. First year was brutal, living off ramen and peanut butter sandwiches, sleeping in my van between jobs to save gas money. Had exactly $300 in my checking account when I landed my first major commercial contract, a restaurant chain that needed all their locations serviced. That contract changed everything. Steady monthly income of $8,500 for maintenance and emergency calls across 12 locations. Gave me the cash flow to hire my first employee and buy better equipment. Word spread through the restaurant industry, and suddenly I was the go-to guy for commercial kitchen plumbing disasters. Now I've got 3 trucks, a 2,500 square foot shop, and I'm pulling in around $180,000 annually. My business partner Sam handles the commercial side, while I focus on residential and emergency calls. We've got 2 apprentices learning the trade, and I'm looking at buying the building we rent next year. The shop's got a full machine room where we fabricate custom fittings, and I just dropped $15,000 on a new pipe threading machine that cuts job time in half. My personal truck's a loaded F-250 Super Duty with all the contractor packages, toolboxes, ladder racks, auxiliary lighting. Cost me $65,000, but it's a mobile office and I write it off. My fiancée Allison, 26 female, teaches 2nd grade and actually gives a damn about her kids. She spends her own money on classroom supplies, stays late for parent conferences, and somehow manages to make learning fun for a bunch of 7-year-olds. She's everything my family isn't. Patient, kind, never acts like the world owes her something. We've been together 3 years, living together for 8 months in a decent 2-bedroom house I bought in a neighborhood that's not embarrassing. The house was a foreclosure I got for $185,000 and put another $40,000 into renovating. Gutted the master bathroom and installed a walk-in shower with rain heads and body jets. Figured if I'm in plumbing, my own bathroom better be impressive. Allison picked out all the finishes. And honestly, she's got better taste than me. The kitchen renovation cost more than my first work truck, but seeing her face when we finished was worth every penny. Here's the thing about success. Once you start making real money, family suddenly becomes very interested in your financial situation. For the past 2 years, I've been covering my parents' monthly rent of $1,400 because dad's pension and mom's government salary barely covered their other expenses. They never asked directly, but there were always hints about how tight money was, how worried they were about making rent. Being the dutiful son, I set up an automatic transfer to help them out. I should have seen the manipulation. Mom would call every month around the 25th with some story about unexpected expenses, car repairs, medical bills, home maintenance. Always just enough to make me feel guilty about having money while they struggled. Dad would get on the phone talking about how proud he was of my success, how he knew I'd take care of family. Classic guilt trip wrapped in praise. Mom Carol spent 37 years working at the motor vehicle department, and I swear she enjoyed making people miserable. She acts like those decades of government employment make her some kind of public service hero, and has opinions about everything from how I run my business to why Allison isn't good enough for me. Dad David's been retired for 4 years from his job at the post office. He spends his days watching cable news and complaining about everything from gas prices to the weather. He's not a bad guy, just completely dominated by mom, and has been for their entire 32-year marriage. His pension is decent, around $3,200 monthly, but mom's spending habits eat through it fast. My sister Brittany works some corporate marketing job for a healthcare company, constantly throwing around buzzwords like synergizing solutions and optimizing client engagement. She's married to a guy named Brian who works in IT and actually has his head screwed on straight. Brittany lives paycheck to paycheck in a $2,200 a month apartment she can't afford, but acts superior because she has a college degree and wears business suits. She's been jealous of my success since I started making more money than her without student loan debt. She acts like she's on the Forbes Council when she's one missed paycheck from asking dad for gas money. She'll make comments about how some people get lucky in business or how blue-collar work isn't sustainable long-term. Meanwhile, she's got $75,000 in student loans for a marketing degree that barely pays more than my apprentices make. Brian's always been cool with me. He works as a network administrator for a mid-sized company, makes decent money, and doesn't pretend to be something he's not. He's one of the few people in the family who congratulated me when my business took off instead of making snide comments about getting lucky. My cousin Diego works construction and has always been the most normal person in our family. He calls out people's BS and doesn't pretend everything's fine when it's not. His older brother Brandon is a mechanic who mostly keeps to himself, but shows up for family events. Diego runs crew for a mid-sized commercial contractor. Good money when they're busy, but he's smart enough to save for the slow seasons. The problem started when I brought Allison to a family barbecue last summer. Mom took one look at Allison's casual sundress and got that pinched government employee expression she reserves for people she considers beneath her. While Allison tried making conversation about Mom's garden and offering to help with dishes, Mom gave her the cold shoulder treatment, like Allison was trying to cut in line at the motor vehicle office. Throughout the afternoon, Mom made little comments. When Allison mentioned she was thinking about getting her master's degree, Mom said teachers should focus on teaching instead of collecting degrees they don't need. When Allison offered to bring dessert to the next gathering, Mom said the family had their traditions and didn't need outside input. Classic passive-aggressive behavior designed to make Allison feel unwelcome without being openly hostile. Brian was the only one who seemed to notice Mom's behavior. He made a point of including Allison in conversations and even asked her opinion about some educational software his company was considering for employee training. Brittany barely acknowledged Allison existed, too busy scrolling through her phone and complaining about work drama. When Mom announced she was finally retiring after 37 years of dedicated public service, I wanted to do something special. Despite her attitude toward Allison, she was still my mother. And 37 years of dealing with angry people at the motor vehicle department deserved recognition. Allison and I planned a surprise retirement dinner at an upscale waterfront restaurant, followed by a week-long Caribbean cruise. The dinner reservation cost $8,200 for their private dining room with waterfront views. The whole package with premium wine selection and 5-course menu. The cruise was another $38,000 for premium everything. Balcony suites on a luxury cruise ship, specialty dining packages, spa credits, shore excursions in 4 different ports, plus the travel insurance because I'm not stupid. I spent hours researching that cruise, read reviews on every cruise forum, compared cabin locations, studied the ship's layout, wanted to make sure Mom got the perfect retirement celebration. The night of the dinner, Allison and I arrived about 15 minutes late because she'd stayed after school helping a student whose parents were going through a messy divorce. The kid was acting out in class, and Allison being Allison, she couldn't just leave without making sure he was okay. She looked incredible in this navy blue dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion. The restaurant's private dining room was everything I'd paid for and more. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the marina, where you could see million-dollar yachts anchored offshore. The sunset was painting the water gold and orange, and there was soft jazz playing from speakers you couldn't see. Real linen tablecloths, actual silverware, cloth napkins. The kind of place where dinner for 2 normally runs $200 before drinks. The restaurant's sommelier had personally selected the wine pairings for each course, and the executive chef had created a custom menu featuring locally sourced ingredients. This wasn't some chain restaurant. They had a prestigious Culinary Award-nominated chef and a waiting list for regular reservations. 14 people were already seated around the massive mahogany table when we walked in. The conversation died instantly, like someone had hit a mute button. Besides Mom, Dad, Brittany, Diego, and Brandon, there were Uncle Pete and Aunt Linda, my cousins Rachel and Kevin, plus a few other relatives I only see at weddings and funerals. Brian stood up when we walked in and shook my hand. "Paul, this place is incredible. Thanks for putting this together for Carol's retirement." Allison immediately apologized for being late explaining about the student situation, and thanked Mom for including her in such a special celebration. Mom barely acknowledged her, instead adjusting her reading glasses to study the wine list like she was deciphering ancient hieroglyphics. Dad was already working on what looked like his second Manhattan, judging by the amber ring on the white tablecloth. Brittany was glued to her iPhone, frantically typing responses to some work emergency with her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the screen. She barely looked up when we sat down, even though Brian tried getting her attention to greet us properly. The server brought out the first course. The family was already digging in, making appreciative noises about the food quality. Diego was telling Uncle Pete about a job site where they'd found a 1960s time capsule, and Brandon was explaining why certain car engines are better than others. Brian was asking Dad about his post office stories, actually listening and engaging like a normal person. Allison reached for one of the mushrooms, literally the closest appetizer to her seat, and that's when Mom decided to demonstrate exactly how entitled and nasty she could be. Don't touch those. Those are for family only. The words cut through the dinner conversation like a chainsaw through plywood. Every single person at that table stopped talking instantly. Even the server, who was refilling water glasses at the far end of the table, stopped moving and stared. Allison's hand stopped inches from the platter, her face going bright red. Not angry red, but the deep, mortifying red of someone who just got publicly humiliated in front of 14 people. Brian looked absolutely horrified. Aunt Carol, what are you talking about? Allison's practically family already. Mom stared directly at Allison with pure contempt, while deliberately reaching across the table to grab the exact mushroom Allison had been going for. She bit into it while maintaining eye contact, chewing slowly and methodically, like she was marking her territory. Fiancé isn't wife. Wife isn't blood. There's always been a hierarchy in this family, and some people need to learn their place. Diego, who'd been quietly nursing a beer and watching this unfold, grabbed 3 mushrooms and placed them directly on Allison's plate with enough force to make the silverware rattle. There you go, Jess. Family privilege officially activated. Brittany finally looked up from her phone, saw what was happening, and instead of defending Allison, she smirked. Actually smirked like watching someone get humiliated was entertaining. The woman had just watched her aunt publicly degrade another human being, and found it amusing. I looked around that table waiting for someone, anyone, to call out Mom's behavior. Dad was suddenly fascinated by his Caesar salad. Uncle Pete was reading the wine list like it contained state secrets. Allison whispered that she wasn't really hungry anymore, and something inside me snapped. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the hardwood floor. Allison, we're leaving, now. Mom didn't even look up from her plate, cutting into the complimentary bread with surgical precision. Sit down, Paul. Don't embarrass yourself over something so trivial. I embarrass myself? You just humiliated my fiancé at a dinner I'm paying $8,200 for, and you're worried about me embarrassing myself? That got her attention. She looked up with this expression like I'd just spoken a foreign language. You invited us to celebrate my retirement. This is my celebration dinner. This was your celebration dinner. Past tense. Enjoy paying the check. Diego stood up too, dropping his napkin on his plate. You know what? I'm done too. This is seriously messed up behavior, even for this family. Brian pushed back from the table and grabbed Brittany's arm. We're leaving too. This is completely inappropriate. Brittany jerked her arm away. Brian, sit down. Paul's being dramatic. No, Brittany. Your aunt just humiliated Allison for no reason. I'm not staying for this. As we walked toward the exit, I could hear Brittany hissing at Brian to sit back down and stop making a scene. The woman who raised me had just nuked a family relationship in front of 14 witnesses, and she was going to finish her 5-course meal like it was just another Tuesday night. We stood in the restaurant parking lot. The 4 of us. Me, Allison, Diego, and Brian. Brittany had stayed inside, probably trying to smooth things over and enjoy her expensive meal. Brian looked absolutely mortified by the whole situation. Paul, I'm so sorry about what just happened in there. That was completely out of line. Diego was chain-smoking and shaking his head. Your mom's completely lost it. I've seen petty family drama before, but that was next-level cruel. She just humiliated Allison at a dinner you're dropping $8,000 on. Brian pulled out his phone. I'm calling a rideshare. Brittany can find her own way home if she wants to stay and finish dinner with people who think treating others like garbage is acceptable. That's when I remembered the cruise. The $38,000 surprise sitting in my email inbox. 7 days on a luxury cruise ship, premium balcony suites with private verandas, unlimited specialty dining packages, spa credits, shore excursions in Cozumel, Jamaica, Grand Cayman, and Costa Maya. I pulled out my phone and called the restaurant first. The manager was surprisingly understanding when I explained there was a family emergency and I needed to leave. Sir, has your party consumed any food or beverages this evening? They're probably still working on the appetizer course, and I'm sure they'll finish the whole meal. In that case, we can process a partial refund for the unused portions, but there will be charges for what's been consumed and the room reservation fee. Fine. Just make sure I'm not paying for the full evening when half the party left after 20 minutes. The cruise cancellation took 31 minutes on hold. When I finally reached the cruise line, the representative walked me through their cancellation policy. Since I was canceling more than 45 days prior to departure, the fee was $600 total. The remaining $37,400 would be refunded within 10 to 14 business days. Cancel everything. The whole booking. Allison stared at me with wide eyes. Paul, what are you doing? Taking back control. They want to act like you're not family? Fine. Family events are officially canceled. Brian's rideshare arrived, and he shook my hand before getting in. Paul, you did the right thing. Nobody should have to put up with that kind of treatment. Diego and I followed Allison back to my house. While she went to shower and decompress, Diego and I sat in my living room ordering food and discussing what had just happened. The cruise was 38 grand, I told him. Diego whistled low. Carol just cost herself the vacation of a lifetime because she couldn't control her entitled attitude for 2 hours. But that wasn't the end of the financial consequences. The next morning, I did something I should have done months ago. I canceled the automatic rent payment to my parents. $1,400 a month that I'd been covering for 2 years without them even asking. If they wanted to treat Allison like garbage, they could figure out their own financial problems. My phone started buzzing within hours. The restaurant bill, the canceled cruise, and now the missing rent payment had created a perfect storm of financial panic. By the time I turned my phone back on the next morning, I had 89 missed calls and 203 text messages. The notification count looked like something from a disaster movie. The messages started confused and panicked about the restaurant bill, but quickly escalated when they realized I'd canceled their rent payment. Paul, the rent money didn't transfer this month. Is there a problem with your bank? Then came the desperate pleading. We need the rent money by the 5th or we'll get hit with late fees. Can you send it manually? Then the financial panic really set in. The restaurant wants $7,400, and now we don't have rent money. This is a disaster. We're going to lose our apartment. But when they figured out about the cruise, the tone shifted to pure entitlement. Did you actually cancel my cruise? That was my retirement gift. You can't just take back what you promised. The most telling messages came from Brittany. You're being a jerk. Mom made one comment and you're punishing the whole family. Now they can't afford rent because you're having a tantrum. I called Brittany back around noon. Paul, thank God. You need to send Mom and Dad the rent money today. They're panicking about making their payment. Why don't you send it? What? I can't afford $1,400 a month. You know I have my own bills. Then I guess they'll have to figure it out themselves. You're being completely heartless. They raised you, supported you, and this is how you repay them? By cutting them off financially over some stupid dinner drama? Brittany, Mom publicly humiliated Allison in front of the entire family. If you think that's acceptable behavior, you can cover their expenses yourself. I told you I can't afford it. You make more money than anyone in the family. It's your responsibility. It's not my responsibility. I'm not their father or their employer. I was helping out of kindness, and they showed they don't deserve that kindness. Brittany was quiet for a moment, then came back with pure venom. You're an ungrateful little shit. After everything they've done for you, and you abandon them over your precious girlfriend's hurt feelings. She's my fiancée, and I'm done with this conversation. I hung up and blocked her number too. That afternoon, my phone rang from Brian's number. Paul, it's Brian. Look, I wanted to apologize for Brittany's behavior last night and this morning. She's been going crazy trying to figure out how to help your parents with rent. She's been pressuring me all morning to cover their $1,400 rent payment. She says it's a family emergency, and we need to step up since you're being unreasonable. And what did you tell her? I told her it's not my responsibility to pay rent for her parents. I never agreed to financially support her extended family, and I'm not starting now. Good for you, Brian. That takes guts. She's been screaming at me for 2 hours about family loyalty and stepping up when people need help. But Paul, I work hard for my money, and I'm not paying rent for people who can work and support themselves. Over the next few days, the family pressure campaign intensified. Uncle Pete called to lecture me about family obligations. Aunt Linda tried the guilt trip approach about Mom's years of service. Even some cousins I barely talked to were weighing in about my heartless behavior. But the most satisfying part was watching Brittany's marriage start to crack under the pressure. Brian told me later that she'd been having screaming matches with him every night about the rent money, calling him selfish and unsupportive. She couldn't understand why her husband wouldn't just write a check to solve the family crisis. For 3 weeks, things were relatively quiet on the family front. Mom and Dad had apparently figured out their rent situation, probably by downsizing or finding cheaper housing. Brittany had stopped calling, and I thought maybe they were finally getting the message. Allison and I decided to plan our own vacation with some of the money I'd gotten back from the cruise cancellation. Nothing as elaborate as the original cruise, but a nice week in the Florida Keys that we could actually afford. We deserved some time away after all the family drama. The morning we left for the airport, I took a selfie of us at the gate with our boarding passes. Both of us were grinning, excited for our first real vacation together. I posted it to social media with the caption, "Off to paradise with my favorite person." Sometimes the best trips are the ones you plan yourself. We boarded our flight, turned off our phones, and didn't think about my family for the entire week. When we landed back home and I turned my phone on, I had 147 notifications. The family nuclear war had exploded across social media while we were gone. Mom had somehow gotten access to my social media post and shared it in some family group chat, spinning a completely false narrative. She was telling everyone I'd literally stolen her retirement cruise and was now flaunting it on social media. Half the family thought I'd actually taken her vacation and was rubbing it in her face. They were calling us selfish, ungrateful, and cruel. Someone had tracked down Allison's photo sharing account and was leaving nasty comments calling her a homewrecker, and worse. Her school email was getting hate mail from fake accounts. Mom was telling everyone I'd stolen her retirement cruise and abandoned my parents financially without mentioning that I'd paid for everything, canceled it after she disrespected Allison, or that this was our own vacation we'd planned with our own money. Diego called while I was scrolling through the chaos. The family's completely losing it. Carol posted that you stole her retirement cruise and cut off your parents financially to spite them. Now half the family thinks you're some kind of monster. Should I post the truth? I already did. Posted screenshots of the restaurant receipts with your name on them, told everyone exactly what happened at dinner and why you canceled everything. About half the family is backing off now that they know the real story. And the other half? Still Team Carol. They think Allison's a homewrecker, and you're completely whipped. Despite the social media war, Allison and I had enjoyed our time in the Keys. Amazing beaches, incredible seafood, and being away from people who think financial manipulation is acceptable, family behavior was exactly what we needed. We got back from the Keys on Sunday afternoon, both of us exhausted from the trip and the ongoing family social media war. Allison decided to stay home Monday with a stress headache while I headed out to my first job of the week. It was a major emergency call, a burst pipe in someone's basement that was flooding their finished rec room. The kind of job that pays well, but leaves you covered in pipe muck. I had to replace about 20 feet of copper piping and install a new water heater. Around 2:30 p.m., I was shoulder deep in pipes when my phone rang. Allison's name on the screen with her contact photo. "Hey babe, what's Paul?" Her voice was shaking, barely above a whisper, filled with pure terror. "You need to come home right now, please." The tone made my blood run cold. She was absolutely terrified. "What's wrong? What happened?" "Your mom, she came over. Paul, please just get home." The line went dead. I dropped my tools and ran to my truck, leaving the homeowner's basement half flooded with equipment scattered everywhere. I found Allison in the kitchen with frozen corn pressed against her left arm. Her hair was messed up, pulled from its ponytail. Her favorite blue t-shirt was torn at the shoulder seam, and there were dark red finger marks on her neck. Jesus Christ, what happened? There was a dark purple bruise from her wrist to her elbow, the kind you get when someone grabs and twists hard enough to damage tissue. Allison tried staying calm. "Your mom showed up about an hour and a half ago, pounding on the door and screaming about the vacation and money. When I opened it, she completely lost it. Started screaming about how I ruined her life, stole her retirement, turned you against your family. She put her hands on you. She pushed her way in and grabbed my arm, shaking me, calling me a manipulative bitch who didn't deserve you. When I told her to leave, she wouldn't. She tried to punch me in the face, but I ducked and she hit the doorframe. That's when she grabbed my throat and said she was going to teach me what happens to women who break up families. How did you get her to leave?" Mrs. Patterson next door heard the screaming and threatened to call police. That's the only reason she let go and stormed out. I called 911 immediately. 2 patrol cars arrived within 15 minutes. Officer Rodriguez and Officer Thompson spent over an hour documenting everything. Photographs of Allison's injuries, witness statements from Mrs. Patterson, evidence of the assault. Based on the physical evidence and witness statements, We have clear grounds for felony assault charges due to the strangulation. You can also file for a restraining order. I want both. I want her arrested, and I want her to stay away permanently. After the police left, I called Mom. She answered immediately. Paul, thank God. You put your hands on Allison. You came to my house and physically assaulted my fiancée. She's lying. I never touched her. I saw the bruises. The police have photographs. You called the police on your own mother? You're not my mother anymore. Mothers don't commit felonies against innocent people. I hung up and blocked her number. Diego arrived 30 minutes later with takeout and wine. He took one look at Allison's bruises, and his face went dark. Carol's completely lost her mind. This is straight-up criminal behavior. The police said she'll probably be arrested tomorrow. Good. What she did is absolutely unforgivable. Mom was arrested Tuesday morning and charged with felony assault. The restraining order was approved Wednesday. By Thursday, the entire extended family knew exactly what had happened. Brittany tried rallying support for Mom, while Diego posted photos of Allison's bruises in the family group chat. Uncle Pete said family business should stay private, so Diego asked if he'd feel the same way if someone assaulted his daughter. The biggest shock came Friday evening when Dad showed up at my house. He looked like he'd aged 15 years in 1 week. Bloodshot eyes, messy hair, wrinkled clothes. Paul, I'm so sorry. Listen. Then he dropped the bomb. Your mother. She crossed the line. I filed for divorce yesterday. Neither Allison nor I had expected that. When the police called and told me what she'd done, I've been married to that woman for 32 years, and I've never been more ashamed. He looked at Allison with tears in his eyes. I failed you both. I should have stood up to her years ago. Why didn't you? Allison asked. Because it was easier to stay quiet than deal with her tantrums. When I saw those police photos, I realized I'd been married to an abuser. But the real satisfaction came from watching the financial and social consequences destroy both Mom and Brittany's lives. Mom's arrest made the local newspaper with her mugshot prominently displayed. The headline read, "Former Motor Vehicle Department employee charged with felony assault." And everyone she'd worked with for 37 years saw it. The state pension board launched an investigation and ultimately revoked her retirement benefits, meaning she lost both her pension and health insurance coverage. The criminal conviction came with a $5,000 fine, 200 hours of community service cleaning parks and highways, and mandatory anger management classes twice weekly for 6 months. But the civil lawsuit was where I really got my revenge. I hired an attorney, a personal injury specialist, who took our case on contingency. The civil suit included assault, battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, medical expenses, and loss of earnings from Allison missing work. Mom had to hire her own attorney at $400 per hour just to defend herself. The civil trial was brutal. We had photographs, witness testimony, police reports, medical documentation of Allison's injuries. Mom's attorney tried arguing it was just a family dispute that got out of hand, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury awarded us $47,000 in damages, plus $18,000 in legal fees. Mom had to sell her beloved luxury SUV to pay part of the judgment. She liquidated her 401k and took the early withdrawal penalties. Dad's divorce attorney was relentless in the property settlement. He got alimony, half the house equity, half the pension, and kept his own retirement accounts. The divorce left Mom financially devastated. 6 months later, Mom was living in a shabby one-bedroom apartment in a bad part of town, working part-time at a big-box retailer's stocking shelves because no government agency would hire her with a felony assault conviction. She lost all her motor vehicle department friends, who saw the mugshot. Most of the extended family sided with Dad and me, and Brittany was her only remaining supporter. But Brittany's downfall was even more satisfying and took longer to develop. The constant fighting with Brian about money and family loyalty had been slowly destroying their marriage for months. She kept pressuring him to help financially support our parents, calling him selfish and unsupportive when he refused. Brian told me later that Brittany would come home from work every day ranting about the family situation, demanding he write checks to solve problems that weren't his responsibility. She'd scream at him for being heartless, compare him unfavorably to other husbands who stepped up for family, and threaten to leave if he didn't start contributing financially to her parents' situation. The breaking point came when Brittany started working late frequently, claiming she had important projects that required overtime. Brian got suspicious when her stories didn't add up. He called me 8 months after the restaurant incident with news I wasn't expecting. Paul, I wanted you to hear this from me first. I'm divorcing Brittany. What happened? I caught her cheating. She's been having an affair with some guy from her marketing department for 4 months. When I confronted her with the evidence, she said it was my fault for not being supportive enough during her family crisis. Brian told me he filed for divorce. The best part? They had a prenup, and it was ironclad. Brian had insisted on it before marriage. Brittany had signed it thinking she'd never need to worry about it. But now it meant she walked away from the marriage with nothing but her personal belongings and credit card debt. Brittany tried desperately to save her marriage, promising to end the affair and go to counseling. But Brian was done. He'd spent months being called selfish and unsupportive while she was cheating on him. With nowhere else to go and no money for her own place, Brittany ended up moving in with Mom at Aunt Patricia's house, Mom's younger sister. Two bitter women crammed into Patricia's small two-bedroom place, both of them broke and blaming everyone else for their problems. Meanwhile, my life kept getting better. Allison and I got married. Dad walked her down the aisle at our wedding. The wedding was everything we wanted. Small ceremony at a vineyard outside town, reception for close friends and family who actually supported us. Diego was my best man, and his speech had everyone in tears. It was hilarious and touching at the same time. Allison's pregnant now, and Dad's excited about being a grandfather. He's been in counseling for over a year, working through decades of enabling Mom's abusive behavior. He's actually happier than I've seen him in years. My business is thriving. We bought the building last year and hired 3 more employees. I'm considering opening a second location across town, and Sam's handling most of the day-to-day operations, so I can focus on growing the company. The restraining order means Mom can't attend any family events. She couldn't be at our wedding, can't visit when her grandchild is born, and won't be welcome at holiday gatherings. She made herself a stranger to her own family because she couldn't treat Allison with basic human decency for 2 hours at a dinner I paid for. Brittany lost her husband, her home, her comfortable lifestyle, and her dignity, all because she thought she could manipulate and pressure people into bankrolling her parents' bad behavior. Sometimes the best revenge is just stepping back and letting toxic people destroy themselves.